this as well. Hoërskool Die Burger pupils are currently protesting outside their school. They are frustrated after a pupil was allegedly stabbed by another pupil yesterday in a school fight. Now, it's understood that police are on the ground trying to control the situation, and the Gauteng Education Department says it disapproves of pupils fighting among each other, particularly at schools. But meanwhile, in another tragic incident in our schools, a grade 6 pupil from Khehlekile Primary School in Thokoza in Ekurhuleni was found dead in a bathroom at his home on Monday evening. 12-year-old Sibusiso Mbatha's family says he hung himself because of bullying at school. Well, they say that Sibusiso was involved in a fight with other students because he was told to leave his gayism outside the school gate. Let's now address these issues with Gauteng Education spokesperson Steve Mabona, who joins me right now in studio for this conversation. Steve, a pleasure having you. Thank you so much for making time for us. I think it's quite tragic any time you hear of a child or a pupil having died, either due to bullying or any other reason for that matter. But as a department, surely you take these matters seriously. What are the merits of such cases that we are hearing about?
Good afternoon to all our viewers. Yes, it's quite concerning as a department. We should be focusing on what we are preparing for, the curriculum. We know that now is 4 days to go. We will be starting with our examinations for the matrics, and tomorrow we are opening a school. So we should be focusing on that. But these, incidences, they are a true reflection of what is happening in our society. I mean, the story that you mentioned about a learner at the burger who stabbed the other one. I mean, it's a girl who stabbed a boy. The grade 8 girl stabbed a grade 10 boy learner. Yes, due to fighting, but we can't fight to an extent that we harm each other, we want to kill each other and fighting. We must not be fighting in a school environment. So it's quite concerning. That's why I will normally say to parents, let's work together. Let's make sure that our children are disciplined, and let's not abdicate that and say, ill-discipline learner must then be seen by the school. Because at the school, we need to focus in the curriculum than focusing on ill-disciplined children.
Yeah. But what are people still doing with knives and dangerous objects in school premises? I know that as a department you had taken this matter quite seriously in different schools, where you'd even dispatched law enforcement to search the bags of learners upon them arriving at the school gate. But it still seems like those interventions are not bearing fruit. Pupils are still carrying very dangerous weapons, it seems, into the school premises.
Now, since we have launched our Kutlamulao, we've been working very hard with the police. We go to different schools, most especially the schools that we've classified as schools that need priority because there's high pressure, there's violence, there's crime, there's a lot of things that are happening. We do sporadic and unannounced searches with the community safety, police, and with the help of Amapanyaza. I mean, we search and we confiscate a lot of things that are not supposed to be at our schools. So on a continuous basis, we conduct those searches. This learner used a pair of scissors, which is quite unfortunate because at some point at school there's an element where you will use a pair of scissors. So it's quite unfortunate, but we work very hard as the department to make sure that we clear anything that might harm, children in our schools.
Yeah. What about the incident where we understand that also a young boy and pupil allegedly committed suicide because of being told to leave his gayism, outside the school premises? Once again, it seems the pupils that identify with being part of the LGBTQI+ community are being bullied and victimized to a point whereby they resort to suicide as an only way out, as an option out. What's your stance when it comes to the community and also the environment they find themselves in schools? Because that also brings in other elements, Steve, such as which bathrooms do they use? Do they use the boys' bathroom? Do they use a girls' bathroom if they identify as gay? How does the department assist in that regard? The teachers as well, who oftentimes say, listen, we're overwhelmed with school, and on the other hand, we also have to be counselors, we have to take care of the children while on the premises. What's the department's intervention in that regard?
Well, before I go into the LGBTQI, and before I go into that community, let me just say this matter, we have launched an investigation an internal investigation as the department to understand on what transpired. We will not be not taking it serious. We're taking it very seriously. All people need to be, interviewed. The investigation will then give us an idea on what might have transpired. Said that the bullying has been identified as one of the serious matters that we take, serious in our schools, and we make sure that when reported, there must be an investigation and they must be dealt with thoroughly. So, going back to the community, there's no one that must be discriminated in our environment, irrespective of where they come from. Hence, as a Department of Basic Education, they are finalizing a policy on how the community must be treated in the schooling environment. Because you will understand that to a certain extent our policies do not accommodate, in the sense that you only have in our school, we only know a boy and a girl without classification of other, because the Constitution allows the classification of other. So the department is working tirelessly to make sure at a policy directive to say this is how we want to have in our schools. You'll understand that at some point there was a leak of draft documents where they were talking about on how to utilize bathrooms and all. There was a lot of noise about the draft, the pushback and all that. But it's documents that were not supposed to be in the public space, because when you draft, you check, you move documents between yourselves as officials to say, what about this? But discussions, they assist formulation of policy, and then consultations as well with relevant parties or stakeholders also assist you to craft a policy that is going to be acceptable in the public by everyone, even though sometimes you'll always have an element of a minority that will not allow or will not accept a policy. But they are finalizing that policy directive that will be assisting us as the provinces, because at our level we implement what the Department of Basic Education would have implemented as policy. So no one is supposed to be discriminated, no one must be discriminated, and that's why we say an element of bullying that is reported, we immediately tackle it head on.
Yeah. And just before I let you go, speaking of tackling it on, briefly if you may, what are the consequences of those perpetrators found guilty of bullying? And I'm not just referring here to students. We've heard of incidents where even teachers have been accused of bullying young pupils. We've heard of teachers, making mockery of young pupils in front of other learners, and that making, a child that want to go to school. So in such incidents where there's a perpetrator that's been identified after an investigation has been conducted, what measures do you take as a department?
No, there's different codes. We're talking learners who are managed by the code of conduct of the school, which is crafted mainly by parents. They will say, this is how we want our children to behave themselves, conduct themselves when they are in a schooling environment. The SGB will then assist us to make sure that we implement that code of conduct. Any transgression, SGB with the school management will then have a disciplinary process where they will then issue anyone who've transgressed, they will issue a sanction. When coming to employees, we are managed by Public Service Code of Ethics. If you are charged departmentally, there are regulations that the disciplinary process will follow as an employee. If you transgress the policy of government, they will then met out the sanction that will be appropriate to the transgression.
And I think it's important to actually communicate that, so that prevention is the modus operandi, it is the way to go, as opposed to cure. When I think everybody, all role players know, Steve, what the consequences look like. They should not then engage in such acts, over and above the fact that it is just the right thing to do and not to bully another, of course, in the school premises, or at least outside. But thank you so much for speaking to me, Steve Mabona, spokesperson of the Department of Basic Education in Gauteng, speaking to me about some of the incidents that we have just unfortunately been hearing about, reading about. about, one of them being, you know, a young pupil who was stabbed to death, unfortunately, post a fight at Die Burger, and another who we understand, of course, committed suicide due to bullying and being told to leave his gayism outside the school premises.